Okay, this is November 25th, 2020. We're talking in general about cognitive evolution, but we're basing what we're talking about on Jean Piaget's description or theory of cognitive development. And so we need to know what his theory is. It's a stage theory, and it's often presented as having like four parts to it: sensory-motor stage, a pre-operational stage, a concrete operational stage, and a formal operational stage. But it turns out that the sensory-motor stage is actually 6 stages, and the pre-operational stage is actually 3 stages, and the concrete operations stage is actually is 2 stages, and formal operations is also 2 stages. So it depends on which book by Piaget you read, how many stages there are. This is taken from a book called The Child and Reality. I'll just hold it up here. And it is, and here's a picture of him. And his first book on child development was in 1924. I think he died in 1980. This is 1972, so it's Child and Reality is from 1972 in the French version. So it's very late in his career. You expect somebody who's studying something or investigating a subject for their ideas to evolve, and what I'm talking about now is one of the latest formulations of his stage theory. It begins with at birth with your reflexes, and this goes on for about a year. Then for a month, excuse me. Reflexes goes from birth to about 1 month, and those are sucking, grasping, some other reflexes that you come with, and some of them maybe don't have specific names. Then from 1 month to about 4.5 months or 4 to 5 months, habits. These are sort of extensions of the reflexes, modified as they adapt to particular objects. Obviously, if you suck a child's play block, it's different from, or if you're sucking the nipple on a milk bottle versus sucking on the other end of it, you're going to have to do some differentiating in how you go about it. At 4.5 to about 8.5 months are the first intentional acts. One of the ones, maybe a prototypical example is following an interesting visual element. Something goes by and you turn your head to sort of prolong the sensation you get as you watch something, which we later consider an object, but it's just a visual element at this age. At the next stage, which is about 8.5 to 11.5 months, responsive coordinations. So you take some of the intentional acts which involve maybe coordinating some of the habits that you had before. Now you're coordinating those intentional acts to the next level, and in response to new situations. You're coming up with combinations that help you address new situations that you come up with. In the next stage, at 11.5 to 18 months, or a year and a half, you actually spontaneously start combining making different combinations of the intentional acts, and you start discovering new possibilities of ways of coordinating what you've already learned. And then the final stage of what we call what Piaget now calls the sensory-motor, or the period of sensory-motor intelligence, is representations and inventions. You begin to sort of model your environment. You start understanding that some of the objects that appear and that you see don't necessarily leave existence when you stop seeing them, but you can understand that they might be moved in ways that are invisible to you. You become much more able to invent as opposed to discover new ways of dealing with situations. So that's the completion of the sensory-motor intelligence period. The next period is called the preparatory period, which is a name I don't like because it sort of depends on knowing what comes next, and it seems to me that each stage should be defined by what it adds, not what it has not yet allowed to be achieved. But anyway, this is the term that Piaget used. But it is, and it is divided into two sub-periods. The first is the preoperatory representation. And again, preoperatory is, again, defining things by what it lacks rather than by what it adds. But the stages, the first preoperatory representation stage is the symbolic function and the internalization of actions, which I guess was beginning at the end of the sensory-motor period. I guess it goes on to be developed and refined. The next stage is states and transformations. This is from 4 to about 5.5 years old. So the child can sort of represent objects by symbols, which are, in a sense, there's something about them that reminds them of the object, so that the symbol can stand in place of it. This is different from something that'll come later, which is the use of signs, which have no necessary relationship other than one that's just agreed upon by society. So it's symbols and internalized actions. And in the next stage and final stage of preoperatory representations, we have articulated regulations. And I guess this means that the child can verbally describe what the child thinks is going on, but has not yet reached, and then hasn't reached what goes on into the next sub-period of preparation. The next sub-period is concrete operations, and now the child can perform simple operations or think in terms of simple operations, and these, what Piaget means by operations is operations are reversible, and one of the maybe more iconic experiments that Piaget does is present a child with two glasses of water, identical glasses, and same amount of water in each, and get the child to say, they have the same amount of water. And if the child doesn't say that, you can use a droplet to adjust them until the child agrees that they are equal. Then you decant one into a shorter, wider glass, and ask the child which one do they have the same amount of water, or does one have more? And in the pre-operational child, will typically say one has more, usually the taller one, but sometimes the wider one. But the concrete operational child is able to understand that he's able to coordinate the end states with the transformation, and realize that what one of the two end states lost in terms of height, it could have exactly compensated for in terms of width and or diameter. And so and since you saw during the transformation nothing was added or nothing was taken away, you can conclude that the volumes of water, the amount of water, the quantity of water has remained the same despite appearances. The second stage of concrete operations, that there are certain whole systems that the child has mastered. For example, setting up coordinate systems. I don't know a lot of detail about that. Again, I just, for the first time, started looking at the child in reality. So these new divisions are, I'm just getting used to them. And then so that ends the concrete operations subperiod and the preparation period. And we move on to the formal operations period, and it again has two stages, beginning with combinative operations, which normatively go from 11.5 to 13 years. And after that, we reach the logic of propositions at around 14 to 15 years, and that achieves a new equilibrium and represents the completion of formal operations. So this is our starting point for what we're trying to do with this seminar. Thank you very much.